If only life were a straight path to our desired destination, wouldn't life be so much easier? Yeah, maybe. But those unexpected zigzags in our path teach us that life's tough struggles have greater purpose than we ever imagined. Stories and strategies are our focus for Season 4. Zigzag and One host, Melanie Brown, chats with courageous women who share their stories of encountering zigzags and how they fought to overcome them. Be assured their stories will inspire and encourage you. But we know warm and fuzzy feelings aren't enough to equip you to fight those challenging zigzags in your path. So, this season, our guests are joining us for another episode to share strategies, mindsets, and habits that strengthened and empowered them during their toughest seasons. Join us in declaring, zigzags may interrupt our path, but they will not detour us. We will keep moving forward.
Welcome, friend! To kick off Season 4, I've invited my good friend and licensed psychologist, Dr. Christi Barolomucci, to join us. I bet you'd agree that the pandemic has impacted each of us in innumerable ways. And one of those ways is how it's impacted our thinking. We know we can't control what kind of thoughts come into our heads. Some are positive and encouraging, while others are negative and destructive. We want the positive, encouraging ones to stay, but I've found, and maybe you have too, that the negative, destructive ones are louder and more demanding. They often barge in, set up camp, and demand all our attention. If you relate at all, today's episode is just what the doctor ordered. Pun intended. Over the course of her 18 years of working with hundreds of clients, Dr. Christi has not only gained incredible wisdom about how our thinking can leave us feeling stuck and trapped, but she also believes and shares with us several simple but effective strategies that are going to help us get unstuck by changing our perspective so we can see all the possibilities instead of all the obstacles. Stinking thinking is definitely a zigzag we will encounter throughout our lives. Join my conversation with Dr. Christi Barolomucci so together we can keep moving forward. Dr. Christi is back in the house. I am so looking forward to this because last time when you were here, Dr. Christi, we did 2 episodes about anxiety right before the pandemic. So before I continue, welcome!
Thank you so much for having me back. We had so much fun last time, so I'm so excited about talking with you this morning.
We got a lot to talk about, girl. So those 2 episodes were about anxiety. You shared so much valuable information, and in case you didn't catch those, they are episodes 17 and 18, and then the pandemic was official, and I called you and said, girl, you got to come back because we got to do some more talking. So that episode, episode 19, you interviewed me and I interviewed you because we talked about how to help our kids navigate uncertain times. Now, uncertain, we're so sick of that word, unprecedented, uncertain, whatever. But you knew that the students and the kids were going to have some anxiety. This was very new to all of us, but it hits younger people in a different kind of way. So you gave some tips for that. And then you interviewed me about online learning. After almost 2 years of it, I think we're all sick of it. But those 3 episodes, 17, 18, and 19, if you have not listened to those, please make sure that you spend the time doing that. Incredible information, which is why almost 2 years later of this pandemic, I knew I wanted you to come back. So we could talk about how the pandemic has impacted all of us. I think most especially from my group of friends and family, the conversation has been a lot about dealing with the fear and the unknown, but also how it's impacted our thinking and how we feel. So we're going to unpack all of that today. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Tell me what you have seen over the last 2 years with your clients and how they have dealt with the pandemic, because even if you're not in therapy, I know we all have similar feelings.
Sure. I mean, there's all the common feelings of what's going to happen next, how long is this going to last, the unpredictabilities, the lack of freedom that we have experienced through this pandemic. The reality is that we've all actually experienced, while there has been quite a few similarities, the pandemic has actually represented quite a few different things for people too. Everyone's reality through this pandemic has also had differences, where some people have faced terrible traumatic losses beyond imagine. Some people have found the quiet and the solitude to be a blessing. And so when I think about people who are coming into the office or friends that I'm talking to, it really depends on their reality of what they have faced. There have been births, there have been deaths, there have been marriages, there have been divorces. And the thing is through this pandemic, life has continued. All the other ups and downs of life have also continued.
Yes.
So part of it is the context, the reality that we've experienced for each person. And that was one of the things I wanted to talk about today, is how we take a look at those realities that we are facing through this. And always, these are kind of general principles that help us every day, whether we're in a pandemic or just in our ongoing lives.
I think I've heard people say they are stuck. I would relate to that myself. There have been periods during these last 2 years that, whether it was in my ministry or with my tutoring or in a relationship, there have been periods where I have felt stuck. Is that something that has come up in your practice?
Oh, absolutely. There's always situations in life. And you'll notice I just said the word always, which I'll come back to, but that is one at a time. That there are situations where we feel stuck. And usually when we feel stuck is that there is a reality that we are facing that we don't know what to do with. We can't figure out movement. We feel trapped. We just don't know the next step. And we start thinking, is this just the way it's always going to be?
Yes.
And when we get stuck, we start into a lot of negative thinking patterns. We start telling ourselves a lot of stories about this reality that we're facing. And what we don't realize is that any situation, no matter how challenging the reality may be, we have this incredibly powerful mind that will help us take a look at what we're seeing, and we can change and make shifts in the way we're thinking that will absolutely impact the way we feel and what we do next. So the bottom line is the way we look at a situation, no matter how stuck we are in that situation, will impact the way we feel and what we do next. So we sometimes think we don't have any, what do we do about that? It's just the way I look at it, right? And I think we often have the conversation about, people will say, are you a glass half full or half empty kind of person?
Yes.
You probably have heard that gets thrown around a lot. And it makes me giggle because at the end of the day, if we have a 16-ounce glass, we've got 8 ounces of water. Whether you see that as half full or half empty, the reality is there is 8 ounces of water in that glass. It's what we think about it that determines our outcomes, how we feel, and what we do next. And we think the way we think about it is just the way it is. We take that as a fact.
That it's unchangeable.
Unchangeable, right? We're stuck. We're stuck with this half-empty glass. When really, it depends on our experiences in life, our histories, maybe traumatic events we've gone through. There's so many factors that each person brings to that specific glass of water, which will help them think, is it half empty or half full? So what we want to do is take a look at that. There's a reality in that glass, and there is a certain amount of ounces of water, and what are we going to do with it? And we actually, our mind is so powerful, we actually can shift the way we look at something for an entirely different outcome.
And that's very powerful, because I'm thinking of the times that I felt stuck, especially during the last 2 years, since that's what we're focusing on today. I'm a solution-oriented type person. That's the way that I think. If I come across a difficult situation, I'm trying to figure out, can I go to the left or can I go to the right? Or do I need to back up and reassess? And what I have found is that through my health struggles and through the challenges I've faced throughout my life, and part of what this podcast is all about, is when we face those times, we just got to keep moving forward. So we can't shut down. We have to go through it. And that's something that I had to keep reminding myself of when I faced those periods of being stuck and feeling trapped. Come on, Mel, you just have to go through it. There's so much learning opportunity when we just go through it.
Absolutely. And that's not at all to invalidate the significance or the hardship of the reality. It's just an invitation to accept the reality as it is. This is the fact. This thing is occurring. And what am I going to do with it in order to get through it? One of the books that I think is just so adorable, it's a kid's book, is called We're Going on a Bear Hunt. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
It is the cutest story, and it comes into mind so often, even in working together with adults, because there's this phrase in there, and it says they're facing this reality, these different challenges that they're going through, grass and mud, all kind of different things, that there's snowstorms. And they had this phrase, and it says, oh no, you can't go over it, you can't go under it. Oh no, you've got to go through it. And I think, gosh, cute little book. It gives us such a powerful lesson is, here is my reality. I can't get around it. I've got to accept it, and I have to figure out how to go through it.
Yes.
And the key to that is, no matter how challenging it is, our goal in our mind is to figure out what tools do we need in order to be able to go through it. Because in any situation, it is a chapter of our lives. It is a piece of time, and we're trying to figure out how to work through that. And so what happens is, when we are faced with that reality, our thoughts can take us to some very dark places. And our thoughts are actually, in part, what gets us so stuck.
Amen.
So when we make small, even really small shifts in our thinking, we can get a very different outcome. I think of it as a kaleidoscope. Sometimes, if you're looking through the kid's toy and you get this picture, and it's a fine picture, you just change that just a little tiny bit, you get a whole new picture.
Yes.
That's how I look at when we do little tiny shifts and changes in our thinking, of how we can get a whole different picture, which we are then no longer stuck. Right? We have possibilities. How do you do that? How do you make these small shifts? How do you even know when you're stuck? Sometimes you'll hear the phrase, like, when we're stuck in stinking thinking, we're stuck in something that we're like, what do I do? So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things, tricks. I really do think of them as tricks that our brain can do to get us stuck. Right? And we call them thinking errors, but every human gets stuck in their thinking and can have stinking thinking, and can find themselves in these common thinking traps. And so we can go through lots of them. I thought there's a few that most of us do when we're feeling anxious or down, sad, depressed. When we're facing a reality, that's when those thoughts can become so powerful and toxic and keep us so stuck.
Yes.
So I thought, let's talk about a few of them. Let's talk about what to do if you catch yourself in them. If you get mail, spam mail or whatnot, you get all this, right? You get all this junk mail.
Whether it's in the mailbox or in your email box, it doesn't matter. It's just annoying.
It's annoying, right? It just comes to you. And we know, just like you did. Ugh, more junk, more spam, what waste of paper. Why didn't my spam box pick this up? What am I doing? We always have, there's junk mail that comes. What we don't realize, that our thoughts can be the same thing. Our thoughts, we have tons of spam and junk thoughts. But we think if we're thinking it, well, then that must be true. That must be,
we do.
Must be fact. It's in my brain. It's my thought. That is me, and this is what I think, and so therefore it is. And what we don't realize that sometimes we're hearing, especially when we're stuck, we are hearing a bunch of junk, just like spam. It's like if you would have believed every bit of you've just won $1 million or well, spam mail. I wish
you need this sweater.
You need this.
Yes.
Right. So we know so well in the world external to say that is junk mail. But when it happens, when those are thoughts that are happening inside of our minds, we don't know that we actually have permission to look at them, to name them, and to figure out, what do I want to do with this? Do I want to keep this thought? Is there something I want? Or is it like, oh gosh, that is definitely junk mail.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking about when I come in with the mail from the mailbox and I see the junk. I don't even let it enter the house. I stop by the recycling box and throw it in. I delete it. I get rid of it.
Right.
Same thing when I look at my promotions folder in my email. I know the ones that I would like to look at, but for the most part, I just click delete, 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 and just move on with my day. I don't even take in that information. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, we need to be doing that with our thinking.
Absolutely.
That's powerful.
And we can do it. And it's not actually even as hard as it sounds. So I'm going to give you a few keys, like a few ways that you can absolutely identify that this thought is junk. Just like you can look at an envelope and be like, recycle, that's
yes.
Right. That I want to teach that to you so that you can do the same thing with your thoughts.
Let's go. I'm eager to hear what you have to say.
Now, there's lots of ways our thoughts can be packaged as junk, but there's these few that I'm going to talk to you about, and then some little strategies for those. One of the most common, and most of us have heard about this, is all or none and black and white thinking.
Yes.
Right? Always.
Never.
This is so common, even how we use in our everyday language. They always, she always, I never. And in each of those sentences, we're actually telling ourselves a story about what we're able to do or not capable of doing. It's also the root of conflicts with others. You think about, well, he never unloads the dishwasher, or she always says this about me, or I can never finish a task, or I always put my foot in my mouth. And so we're telling ourselves a story that actually get us stuck and get the relationship stuck. Because there's not other possibilities. It's an always or never. And the reality is very rarely is that the case. So one of the things when I think about when you have identified the envelope of spam is if you hear always or never, toss it out. What am I talking about? Is that actually true? Is that actually a true statement? Well, I mean, often, right? But there's other possibility. What that lets our mind know is that there's other possibilities.
Or explanations for their behavior. Instead of they always do so and so. Maybe that's true a lot of the time, but it could also be that there are other things going on and your brain is saying the negative side of it when there might be a plausible explanation.
Absolutely. And we do that for ourselves too. So say you're nervous about going into an event or a party, and you have some social anxiety, and your brain is telling you, you always put your foot in your mouth. You never know what to say to people. You're just always so awkward. When you walk in that room, you're already going to feel anxious. You're already going to feel like, I don't know what to do or how to talk to people. You're already setting up the event to not go as successfully as you're really wanting and hoping it to be. So when we start looking at that, saying, wait a second, that's not true. I actually am capable of having really good conversations with people. I do great with one-to-one conversations. I have my friend right here with me, and we start looking at the other possibilities. All of a sudden, our thinking shifts, and we can begin to feel excited about what's coming next rather than terrified of walking into the room.
I like the idea of checking off the always and never statements that we think as spam or junk mail and making a conscious decision to toss it out. I'm just thinking through various scenarios and conversations that I've had with people or even in my own head where the always or never have led me down a bad path as far as my thinking about others or myself. And that's not where we want to be.
I think of it, there is this game, I think it was called Taboo, and you had to describe a word without using some keywords. And if you said one of the keywords, you get buzzed.
Oh,
You get a little
yeah.
buzz. I think of that in our brains. When we hear certain words, we kind of want to buzz ourselves. What was that? What am I telling myself? So all or none is definitely black and white. The recycling, the things that you just thought you want to stick into that recycling bin. The other, and one that's very common is catastrophizing. That means like we make something into the worst case scenario. I hear this quite often from teenagers. If I don't get all A's, I'm never getting into college. But we get anxious because we tell ourselves if it is not this thing, then this horrible, terrible thing is going to occur. As just humans, we do it all the time.
Yes, we do.
We do it quite often. And what we want to do there is not minimize that worst case scenario. People will say, well, that could occur, right? That could happen.
Certainly, it could.
Certainly, there is a possibility that your worst case scenario, that the worst case that you could possibly dream of could occur. But the reality is that there is tens, if not hundreds and thousands of other possibilities that could occur as well. And the likelihood of those other possibilities is much greater. So often the worst case scenario, what is the percentage? What is the likelihood that worst case is going to be what happens? What is the possibility if I don't have all A's in school, that there is zero possibility I will get into college? We know that's not the case.
And the same thing with getting sick from COVID.
Yes, that is a possibility, and for many people, it was a reality, a very grave situation, and if for others, it's not. So it is a possibility. So it's not to ignore the severity of a possibility, but it's to stop yourself and say, okay, given that is one of the realities, what can I do? Right? What can I do in this situation at this moment that would help my health, that would help me to decrease the anxiety, to get the support that I'm needing, the guidance, the medical care that I'm needing, right, to prevent. So it's not that we ignore the worst case scenario. We know that is a possibility. It is one of multiple possibilities, and we can then shift into action of what we want to do to manage all the fear around, rather than just get paralyzed. What happens when we go to immediate worst case is we get paralyzed. We freeze. And so what we're trying to do is keep movement and possibility so that we can take steps towards, whether it's mental health, physical health, that would promote our overall well-being in the meantime.
And how we're going to go through it.
How we go through it. Is how we go through it, because we can't get over that. We can't go under it. We've got to go, so it's how we're going to show up in that journey, and knowing that there's lots of different possibilities that may occur. This brings me to our next one, is we're not mind readers and we're not fortune tellers.
Thank goodness.
Right? So we don't know. So anxiety or stuck thinking will sometimes tell us we know the outcome, and that's why we believe the catastrophic thinking, because we know.
We know that's going to happen. It always happens.
It always happens. We know. I always have bad luck. It would always be me, right? And so this horrible thing is going to happen because we believe at some level that we have some mind reading and fortune telling abilities that we don't have.
Yes.
Right? Yes. We have to meet our reality in the current place that we are.
Oh, yeah.
Mind reading, right? And so that can come in often with how we function in life. So I know exactly what they're thinking about me. I walked in the room and she said she was thinking XYZ. I saw this and I just know.
Yes.
So we believe that we know what other people are thinking and are going to do.
And I've heard this before with adults and with teenagers. I just know they hate me because they're not responding to my text.
They left me unread.
Right. We are assuming so much that on a very small scale might be true. But as you said, we are reading into someone else's mind and we don't know.
Right. We have no idea. So mind reading is exactly that, making assumptions about our reality, or making assumptions about other people and what they're thinking as it pertains to us. And then we take that mind reading as fact.
Yes.
I know you think this about me, so I'm going to feel so angry at you because I know you think that about me, and I'm just going to ignore you. I'm not going to call you, and some acting out behavior, when in reality, the whole storyline was created on a thinking error of mind reading rather than getting the facts. So we want to think, what are the facts? What are the facts that I know? Right? And we often realize we don't know the facts. We don't really know the person. If they did not tell you,
Yes.
we don't know. Everything else is we're making up.
To use a writing term, it's fiction instead of nonfiction. And fiction has so much leeway and can go in so many different directions, whereas fiction, or nonfiction, excuse me, it's the facts. It's the true, accurate information. Those are all facts. Whereas fiction, it can go any different direction and it can be interpreted any kind of different direction.
Absolutely. And that's how our mind takes a situation, does a thinking error, and turns it into a fictional story that we take as fact. We know. And this actually happens quite a bit. It can happen obviously with people that we don't know well, but it happens quite a bit with people very close to us,
Yes.
right? And sometimes the people that are closest to us, the relationships that are closest to us, we think we know them, so we think we know what they're thinking even better. We are most likely to make those big assumptions and mind read. I know what my partner, I know what this person is doing and thinking. I know them, so I know they were thinking this when they did that. When in fact, that is not true at all. And we really don't know their intention in that moment. We're making an assumption in mind reading what they were thinking and doing. So you want to catch that. Like, do I know this for fact? Was I told this, or did I just make that story up in my mind?
That is fascinating. I have to tell you, I could probably ask you 1,000 more questions just to really understand all those different things. But what do we do if we get trapped or stuck in those things?
So what we want to do is we want to hear our thinking errors like that taboo, like buzzer in our mind. Like, whoop, we want to catch it. We want to know it just like we look at an envelope and we say it's spam. The first thing that we have to do is catch it. There's the whole old saying, first thing is become aware of the problem, right? We have to name the problem. We had talked about before with anxiety, sometimes we have to name it to tame it. I'm having a thinking error. Like, what am I telling myself? What? Just like if someone was talking with us and they said something that just sounded outrageous, we'd be like, wait, what did you mean? Or what did you say? We would immediately question if someone else said something that was pretty outrageous to us. But when it's happening in our brain, we go through our thoughts so quickly that we don't often stop to catch and say, hey, wait, what was that I just told myself? Is that true? So the first thing we want to do is catch it and kind of buzz, like our mind, like, whoa, what? And we want to bring attention to the story that we're actually telling ourselves. What am I telling myself? What story am I creating? And we want to take a pause and take a deep breath. Like, wait a second. What is this? Let me see what's true about this. Am I hearing always? Am I hearing never? Am I hearing I know what they think? Am I hearing what if this? What if that? Right? When we hear those words, that alarm goes off and we want to say, what is a more realistic story? Wait a second here. What is a more realistic story? What do I need to find out? What do I need to look? How could I look at this differently? How can I say, hey, this is one possibility. It is one possibility that this person cannot stand me. That's one possibility. What are some other possibilities for why that interaction just felt a bit off or awkward?
And it could be something as simple as they are in a stuck spot and they don't have the mental or emotional energy to contribute to a relationship at that point in time. It has nothing to do with us.
That's a great point. One of the things we do want to remember is that each person's actions speaks to them, right?
Yes.
It is other people's actions have nothing to do with us specifically. It has to do with how they are perceiving a situation, what is going on in their world and how they're acting from that spot, just as we each do. If you had one reality and you had 5 people line up, they could tell you 5 different stories about that reality and how they feel about it and what they're going to do, and it's all informed by their own perspectives, experiences, and history.
Perspective is so great. I remember many years ago having someone explain that if you are in a room and something occurs in the middle of the room, one person is on one side and one person is on the other side, what they see, even if they capture it in a picture, is not what you see.
It's all about perceptions. It's all about the lens that we
Yes.
wear. Sometimes if you're getting really stuck and there's a theme, sometimes people get stuck on the same thought, right? There's a particular issue. It's not just a thought that's fleeing. It is a dynamic that's happening with someone in your role. Maybe it's something at work or with a relationship you're having, and you're getting stuck in the same thing again and again. It's important to talk it out, even if you tell the story aloud of what you're saying to yourself, or if you journal it, write it down, because in our heads, our thoughts go quickly and we fill in the blanks, and stories make sense that when we say them out loud or we write them down really don't. We can see the errors, we can see the holes in our story when we go to write it or when we go to speak it. So if there's something that you're really getting stuck in one of those thinking patterns, particularly in a specific dynamic, take a moment to talk it out with someone. Take a moment to write it down and see where you might be going a bit awry in creating a fictional story. There are also things that we can do that just kind of give us our baseline a little bit kind of healthier mindset overall, because we make more thinking errors when we're anxious or stuck or overwhelmed, and when we're in a state that can feel more conflicted or negative to us. But there is also what we want to do is think about how do we change that baseline of how we're approaching our day.
What strategies do you recommend to your clients and your friends and your family of how to get unstuck?
Well, I think I'm all about accepting reality as it is. And our thinking is no matter what situation we're in, we're always going to have the possibility, hear my always, right? Can buzz myself too. We are thinking beings. So
it never shuts off.
It doesn't stop. Our mind chatters. Right?
Yes.
Constantly chatters. So we accept that when we think, which means we're going to have some errors.
Of course.
That will happen. But there are things that we can do that really do change our day-to-day mindset. And so those things help us become more aware of our thinking, put our outlook change our lens a bit on how we're looking at stuck situations.
Shift the kaleidoscope a little bit.
Change the kaleidoscope. And these are more everyday practices. These are just everyday fuel for the brain. And sometimes when we talk about these things, people are like, oh, do you really practice these things? Is this kind of hokey? But they really do make a difference. One of the most important things that we can do is having a practice of gratitude. It's not just I'm writing 3 things down in my journal at night, I did it. What we're doing is when we start practicing gratitude, we begin to our lens changes. We begin to look for things that we're grateful for. We begin to look for things that are working out well. It may start as I have to have 3 things to write down in my journal, but what we're really doing is training the brain to look for what is going well, what is going right, the blessings that we have. And we usually have many, many more than we ever really allow ourselves to recognize.
Because there are so many wonderful things that happen to us all throughout the day.
All throughout the day. And things that when we take a moment to notice may bring a smile to our face. When we have a smile to our face, believe it or not, that actually changes our mood.
Yes.
So I was driving the other day. It was the other morning and the moon was so beautiful, right? And just noticing.
You were up early.
I was. So it was so beautiful. And it made me take pause and be grateful. Sometimes it's little things, but it just sets a tone. Sometimes it's you've had such a rough day. It's such a long day, and you had a lot of that thinking, and you just can't wait. You just crawl into that cozy bed, and you're just so happy to finally be in that bed at the end of the day. Thank you. Right. So we're looking for things. They can be big things that occur, but little. But we're training our brains to find the good, not just the problem, not just the stuck, the things that aren't going well.
Yes. Absolutely. I think about my son's wedding that was just this last weekend, and my goal during the entire weekend was to savor every moment. And I found myself, even the smallest things, God gave you a great hair day. Woohoo! Because sometimes this curly hair can go wild and it doesn't want to behave. But on that day it did. And I was so grateful. Seeing my boy stand up there at the altar with the woman that he loves, all I could do was be grateful. So that was a big thing.
Yes.
But I have benefited greatly from a gratitude journal. But there were days, like you mentioned, where I would get to the end of the day and say, okay, what are the 3 things so that I can check this off? While that's not a bad thing, it does train your brain, because then I noticed as that year progressed, I would be at a stoplight and I would look around and something would catch my eye and I would say, wow, that is really cool. I am so grateful for that. Or somebody holding the door open for me. It's the big, big things, but it's also the little things. And it does change how I think. And I know it has many other people. So gratitude is one of my most favorite things.
Absolutely. It changes our outlook.
It really does.
It puts us in a little bit of a different step with the day.
Yes.
When we do these practices, it's the act, but it's also how it changes us over time. And the things that at first start that we really have to think about doing down the road become, we don't even think about it. We just are doing it. We just automatically notice the things and, oh, thank you. That was great. Thanks. Oh, that was beautiful. You just begin to have your mindset naturally do that. Another way that we can really train our brain is by focused attention mindfulness. And what that really means is being present with what I'm doing, right? That I'm in this moment here with you. I might have a to-do list of 50 things, right? And I could be spending every minute here with you anxious about how am I going to get all that done. There's no time in the day to get all that stuff done, right? And I could let my mind wander, right?
Yes. And worry.
And start telling myself, I'll never get that done.
I'll never get it all done.
I'll never get it done, right? Or I can take a deep breath and I can say, I am here with you now, and I want to absolutely be in this present moment here with you. Knowing when I leave, the next thing that we've done, I'll be present in doing that. So we want to show up where we are. That presence, when we're eating, we want to take a moment to make sure we know what we're eating, not just shoveling it down.
And to enjoy and savor it.
And be in the present, be mindful, be grateful.
Enjoy the people that you're eating with.
Right. So it's just that present. So what happens with our thinking is it takes us often really far forward, really far back, way down inward, and we forget to look out right here, right now to what I'm doing and how to be present. Some people have practices that they do with that, such as meditation. Meditation really is focused attention. And what it does is it lets you become aware of when your mind is wandering. It lets you become aware of just the thoughts that are coming in and out of your head. You just learn to kind of watch your thoughts like you would watch the ocean, like you'd watch a TV show. You can watch them go by without becoming every thought that passes in our brain. And then we can say, whoop. You more easily recognize, oh, that was definitely junk thought. I see that coming. I can toss that. Delete. We don't hook in so much because we learn how to see our thoughts. So that practice can make just a huge difference. Even a few minutes a day makes a difference in becoming aware of what we're thinking, where we're going. And I think most importantly, and this one's a little deeper and a little more philosophical with some, but it's reminding yourself that you have a purpose, right? On our days that are hard, and then our days that we kind of get lost or feel disconnected, it is easy to feel like, what is even my purpose, right? Our brain can take us to some really kind of dark places and can say, like,
it can.
Right? And the reality is we all have a purpose. We are here with a purpose. We each and every one of us have worth. Some days we are really connected with that life purpose and we're kind of rocking and rolling. Other days we don't have a clue. We don't have an idea. We feel like we've lost our way. We don't know what's next. What am I even doing? And we feel lost. And I want to remind you that every day when you're feeling that, to think, what is my purpose today?
Yes.
What can be my intention for today. It doesn't have to be some big, grand, massive thing. It can be bring it down to today. That goes back to practicing mindfulness, being present today. What is my purpose? It could be I need to bring a little fun in my day. It could be something as simple. I want to connect with someone. I want to be sure that I'm showing gratitude to the world. I want to be kind to someone else. I want to be of service to someone else today and for today.
Or today's purpose may be that you need to rest.
Oh, rest is major.
I have absolutely fallen in love with the idea of rest and how important it is to us. But going back to what you were saying about always being, well, not always, because we're not using the word always.
Did you hear that, Buzz?
Yes, I did, and so I stopped. It's already working,
That's
Dr.
what
Christi.
happens.
How awesome is that?
As soon as you start practicing, you'll start hearing it.
Yes. No, always. What you were saying about our life purpose, and this last year, I had a few things that occurred that made me question my life purpose and made me feel a little directionless. And as you said, we can't get trapped in always thinking that big picture. What is today's purpose or this week's purpose? And that has grounded me a lot and really helped me with my thinking, because my life purpose and what I feel like I'm called to and what I feel like my goals are big. I can't accomplish those in one day or 1 week. And I have to remind myself of my daily purpose. Or what do I need to get accomplished this week? What is my purpose this week?
Absolutely. And you just did a great job of how you change and get unstuck. You recognize, I told myself, I'm never going to be able to do this. You
Never.
said, never, right? Never. And you said, whoa, wait a second. I do have a really huge purpose that I want to fulfill. What do I need today?
Yes.
And you brought it down to the present. You evaluated the story that you were telling yourself. That is not true, that it's never going to happen. It's not going to happen all today, right? We can't accomplish the massive thing maybe today. What can I do? What is it that I'm needing right now that would allow me to rest, to nourish, to get my mindset in a good place so that I can? So often I'll think of those words, so that I can. Do I rest so that I can, right? Do self-care so that I can do X, Y, Z.
I like that. That's powerful.
Yeah. So lots of all of the little mind, all we're doing in each of these examples is recognizing some thinking that we're having, taking a moment to pause and shifting into some other possibilities. And just like the kaleidoscope, we get a whole different picture.
Well, I found myself doing it just a moment ago, and it caught me by surprise because, as you said, we've got to catch it right in the beginning. And I was using those always and never words, and my mind went, no, Mel, no, you need to delete that. And so then I reformatted and I went through what is true. I knew it was going to be powerful, but here I am, living testimony that it can happen quickly and it can have a huge impact. So those strategies to get unstuck, gratitude, oh yes, very, very powerful strategy. And then practicing that mindfulness, that focused attention. Oh, how we would all benefit so much if we would just live in the moment. Not in the past, not in the future, but just in the moment, because there are so many wonderful things happening that I know we all overlook. Our mind is elsewhere. And then the last one, where we're talking about our purpose. We all talk about our purpose. Why am I here? What is my purpose? And it's very powerful for us to break that down into big things, medium things, and daily things so that we don't get this overwhelming negative thought process going. I absolutely love what you have shared today. I think there are so many takeaways from what you've shared.
I hope so. I hope that others will find it helpful too. These are all little tricks that we can all do that make a huge difference.
Well, I know what I'm going to do is take my notes from today and put them on the show notes. This would be an episode, if this were another podcast that I were listening to, that I would want to take notes for, and perhaps some of the listeners started listening and they got interested in the conversation and didn't take notes, and now They don't remember all the great info that you gave, so I'm going to share all of this in the show notes. It's so valuable, and it can make such a big impact on our lives. So thank you, Dr. Christi.
Thank you so much for having me today to talk with you about all this. I'm passionate about it and just happy to share it.
You're passionate? What? I didn't notice that at all.
Thank you.
Until next time, when life zigs and zags, keep moving forward.